Hi guys, this is Faizan from Great Learning. Welcome to this session. Before we start our session, can you quickly write yes or no in the chat section if I am audible or not? Is there any echo? Is there any noise that you are hearing? Just quickly write in the chat section so that we can start this session. Quickly guys, I am waiting for you. Hello. Am I audible, Supriya? Is there any noise? In the meantime, Great Learning has come up with an initiative, Great Learning Academy, wherein we have 100 plus courses available for free. And after the completion of that course, you will also get a certification which you can put in your resume and also at the projects that you have covered during those in those sections in those I mean to say in those courses. Okay, cool. Am I? Yeah, cool, guys. Let's start. So today, what we are going to build a ping pong game. Okay, it is also called as table tennis, but with a revised version. Okay, it's also called pong game. It's also called ping pong, whatever you name it. Okay, so let's get started. The table of content. So what are we? What are the things that we are going to build? Okay, cool, guys. So the things that we are going to cover in this section, we are going to first create an HTML page. Then we are going to select those elements which we created in our HTML page. Then we are going to draw shapes, then they require objects, and then creating those functions. Okay, now let's get started. First, let's see the HTML code that we are going to use. So as it's obvious that the skeleton of HTML will be there, right? So it contains HTML, then the head, which contains title, which will be above in the tab bar, right, in the tab section. Then the background we are setting. Though, can anyone quickly tell me, is it the correct way or the right way to style your HTML page that I'm using inline styling here? Quickly, guys. Just tell me yes or no. Is it the right way or the appropriate way to use an inline styling in the body section that I have used background color gray? Is it the right way to do it? Yeah, you can do it, but is it the right, I mean to say, right approach or anything? If yes or no, if anyone can tell me. Quickly, guys, I am waiting for your answer. You should have a separate file. Exactly. Mano, this is not a right way. You can do it, but this is not a correct approach. We have to use the separation of concerns. But since my CSS file will contain only one line of code, that is this background color. That's only the CSS that I'm going to use. So that's why I used here as an inline CSS. That's the reason. If you have many lines of CSS code, I mean to say I'm using a lot of CSS, then it's better. The best approach is to have a separate file. Okay, it can be done. Yes or no, it can be done, but it is not the right approach. But since my file will contain only this much CSS, so what I'm going to do, I'm not going to create any external CSS file. Okay, for JavaScript I'm going to use an external JavaScript file, but not for this thing. Okay, cool, let's get started now. So then I'm creating a canvas ID, that is the canvas element, which will give me whatever the graphics that I will do will be within this block of within this block, that is which contains width 600 and height 400. Then I close my canvas, and then I will include my script file, that is JavaScript file. Okay, cool. Now let's see the demo of this part. Okay, first let's see the demo of this part that we're going to use. So herein we have this. I will just remove the CSS part here. Okay, this is the same thing that I told you guys, right? And now let's run this file. What is called first, what is the name of the file that I saved it? Just a minute, guys. It's called pingpong.html. Okay, pingpong.html, here is it. Yeah, so you see, now this is the file, right, that I just made. Okay, but you cannot see the canvas, right, since it is not containing anything. So that's why we are not able to see the canvas. Okay, That's the only reason. But if you see, the background of this page is gray, right? And which is rightly so, because I have used this background color gray. Okay, this is the file that we got, right? So now let's move ahead. So HTML part, this is the only thing that we are using in HTML section. Okay, apart from this, we are not going to use anything in our HTML page. So if anyone is having any confusion with all the things, all the elements that I have written, please go ahead and tell me. I will just explain you a little bit about it. But apart from that, this is nothing, right? This is the only this is the skeleton which is contained in every HTML page, right? So now this is the page that I got, right? Just the HTML, including the CSS, because there were only one line of code, so that's why we used this. Now the JavaScript code. So the first thing that we are going to, what we created in our HTML page, we are going to select. How do we do the selection? Document.getElementID, because we created an ID which was called table, right? We created here an ID which is called table, right? You see, this is the ID that we created. Now we are going to select it with the help of, okay, the canvas is used to just to create the graphics. That's it. So and what about the script? The script tag is just for including the script file. So since I have commented it out, how do you comment in JavaScript? This is the way that you comment in JavaScript, right? So this was commented, I commented this line because I was not including any JavaScript in it, right? So I commented it. Now I will uncomment this line. Okay, so this script tag is used to include your JavaScript file in your HTML. That's it. And the canvas is used for graphics, so that we can create any graphics on the with the help of HTML. So if you want that, canvas element can be used. Okay, which contains the ID table, and width and height are its attributes, right? So that will be on that page, okay, on the HTML page. Okay guys, so now we will select these elements and then for drawing anything, we need this draw function or this get context function, right? So what is the build of this? It's in the form of 2D, right? We are going to use X property and the Y property. So that's why we are going to use this, whatever we fetched from this, right? We first selected the element, right? Which tag, what is the tag? To include CSS file. So to include CSS file, you have to just use the link tag. Okay, so for example, if I wrote here anything like this, right, I will press and enter here, and then I will write link, and then here you can just refer to the CSS file .css, and that's it. You can get your CSS file included here, okay, with this link tag. Now let's save this file again and let's go back to our slides. Okay, so we selected that, and with the help of get context, that is the method, we will build our whatever we want to do. So for drawing the shapes, let's first do this thing. Okay, let's not get you guys confused. So S1 is the script file that I'm going to use. Now I'm going to use this S1. So you see, I selected the element with this, right? The DOM object, that is the document I created, and then I selected that element ID, and after that I put it in an object, that is can, and then I called the function get context. If you guys can see it, I will just maximize it. Okay, so get context is the method, and the build of this is 2D, that is we are going to use x-axis and y-axis. It's not a 3D event, so I will put it in the draw, and after that I will just use fill style to fill that thing, right? The color of that canvas will be, the canvas color will be black, and fill rect is the method, another method that we are going to use, which contains this. Fill rect will contain the x position, the y position, and the width and the height. So width and height will be same as the height and the width of the canvas, so that's why we are going to use can.width and can.height. So after, when we run this, we save this program, and when we included this in our script, in our HTML file, and after that when we run this thing, now you will be able to see the canvas. So this is the canvas, okay, that we are talking about. So this until this point, everything is clear or not? Just quickly write a yes. So whatever we use, whatever we need to draw anything, if we need to draw anything on our canvas element, we need to fetch first that element, and after that what we will do, we will just use get context. So this get context is used to draw anything on our canvas. So that's the main objective of this canvas. Okay, so just quickly write a yes if everything is clear. Right now we are talking just basic stuff. Okay, so now let's go back in our this thing. Okay, so now drawing the shapes. Okay, so now we are going to use first the fill style that is used to fill the color. Okay, great. So now the fill style is used to color, and fill rect method is used to fill the I mean to say to draw the rectangle. Okay, after that we are going to use we are going to need just not the rectangle but another thing, that is the what, the circle, which will point to here and there. Okay, so if you can see what we are trying to build, now we are going to try to build this thing. The first is the rectangle, right, and the circle. So for that we are going to use these methods. Okay, so draw fill style will fill in the color, right, and after that begin path will, that means when you're trying to build a circle on the canvas, you need to call this function, that is begin path, and then the close path function. Okay, and after that fill. Now to draw and circle, we need an arc method which contains x position, y position, that is the x-axis, and the y-axis, the coordinates, right, the x coordinate, the y coordinate, and then the radius. Obviously in circle we have something called radius, right, you know that guys, right, and the circumference of the circle is 2 pi r, right, so mat.pi into 2, which will help us to create the circumference. This 0 represents the start angle, right, the start angle is from 0 up to this circumference of the circle, that is 360. Okay, after that this false is written there, right, so what this false means, it means that we are going to build our circle in a clockwise direction, though it does not make any sense, but since we have to send it in an argument, right, so it doesn't, after when we run this code, you won't be able to detect if it is we are building in a clockwise direction or in an anti-clockwise direction, but this is an argument we have to pass. So false means that we are going to build in a clockwise direction, and what if it is true, that means we are going to build it in a anti-clockwise direction. So now let's see, when we run this thing, we are going to use the same thing, right? Now here is my s2 file, right? So in this I'm using the same thing, right? So draw fill style is red, and the rectangle I'm going to build is of the x position is 100 and the y position, that is the starting x coordinate and the y coordinate, then width and the height. So width is 30, that's why it doesn't look like a rectangle, it looks like a square, right, because the width and the height of this is same. And then we have our circle, right, first we fill in the style, that is the color of the circle, then begin path method, then close path, and in between we are going to use the arc method, which contains the position, that is 200 and 200, right. If I you going to use this position, right, the x position is 100 and the y position is again 100, that means we are going to build both the rectangle and the square on each other, right, they will coincide with each other. And then we have the radius of the circle, that is 10, then the start angle is 0 and the end angle is 360, that is mat.pi, which gives us the value of pi into 2, that is the circumference, right, so 2 pi r, right, we created our circle, and then the false represents that we are going to build it in a clockwise direction, then we close our path, and then the fill. So this is the syntax, right, this is nothing but we need to follow this syntax to create anything on our canvas. Okay, now let's save this file, and after that let's include it in our script file. Okay, s2 done. Are you using arc method to create a circle? Yes, yes Ayushi. So now let's save this file, and now let's see what is the output that we got. Earlier when we were not having any circle or what, or any rectangle, right now it looks like a square, we will change it for later. Okay, so now once we will press the refresh button, now you see this circle and this square, which means a kind of a rectangle that we are trying to build, it will coincide with each other, right, because you see now there is one important point. You see this circle is not completely coinciding with this square, right? This property we are going to use again and again. This is because the center of the circle is the thing that we are going to what the circle center will be its starting point, right? The circle center means that what we used as x coordinate and y coordinate was 100 and 100, which was same for the square, but it coincides with that center point. Okay, apart from that, we are going to use this for when we detect the collision and all those things. Will be the main objective will be that thing we need to remove those signs. Okay, just for now you can just understand that without confusing you guys. You just understand this thing, that this circle center point and the squares, what is the square starting coordinates, that is x-axis and y-axis, will be same as center point of the circle, right? So 100 comma 100, which is the coordinate for circle and which is the coordinate for what, the square as well. So the center point and the starting point of the square will coincide. That's the main objective of all those things. Okay, now let me just remove this thing first. This was the S2. You see, although we are going to create this x-axis and y-axis, that is the x coordinate, x position and the y position on the canvas is 100 and 100. It should start, the circle should start from the same position, but circle center point represents these things. Okay, that's the main objective that I was telling you. And now let's separate them, that is the x position and y position. Let's change it. Let's run this thing. Now if you observe carefully, the canvas that we built is gone, right? Because we are not going to, we didn't included that thing in our file. So now let's see. Now let's go back in our, right now it's clear, right? We just used this thing, we selected them and we just build the circle and the rectangle. That's it. Though it looks like a square because its coordinate, its width and height are same. Okay, now this is the output that we got, right? Now let's try to create these objects. Okay, so first we need an user method, right? User object, right? There will be two players, right? The first player which will be controlled by you and me, right? The player 1, and the player 2 is the computer, that is the CPU. Okay, so these objects we require, and then the ball, which will on the basis of which we decide whether you one or the CPU one. Okay, and then the separator. The separator is just for the sake of to beautify it. So separator will, and between those separator will divide the CPU and the player 1 from that. Okay, and then the scorecard. Now let's see first what is the ball object. Okay, so ball will be having, obviously it's a circle, then it will be having what, the x coordinate and the y coordinate. So we have used canvas dot width divided by 2. Why did we do that? Because we want the circle to be at the center. Okay, that's why. How the AI computer will be implemented. So we will get into that, Abhishek. We will get into that. So how we will implement, I will show you the 3 ways how to implement that. Okay. Now if you see, this const ball will contain x coordinate and the y coordinate, right? Then we divided it by 2. That means we want the circle to be at the center. Okay, the width and the height. So after that, circle will be having some radius, that is 10. Then the velocity in x direction, that when it moves in the x direction and when it moves in the y direction. So x-axis and y-axis. Then the speed of the ball, right? You might be thinking that velocity and speed, what is the difference? So velocity is nothing but the speed plus direction, and speed contains only the speed, right? And then the color, green. Then the separator, which will again be at the middle, okay, in the middle of the canvas. Now why I subtracted 2? Because that is the width of that, what, of that separator, right? We are going to use the rectangle for separator again, you will see. Okay, so now I subtracted that thing from, because that's the width, so we want it to be at the center, so we subtracted width from it. And then the height and the width, it is going to be in the form of rectangle that we are going to use. Okay, and then the color white, so it will be in color white, or whatever we want. If we want, we can change it. Okay, now this is the separator and the ball, right? The separator and ball object is gone. Now let's see user bar. So the user object that we are going to use, right? So now the user means that we are going to build a tab or a bar, right? So that bar will represent what? It's there will be X position for it, there will be Y position, that is X axis and Y axis, right? And after that we are going to, again we are subtracting this thing from the X coordinate, what? The height, right? We are subtracting it so that it will not go beyond the canvas, it will be in the canvas. Okay, so that thing will be subtracted, and width will not include anything in apart from that. So width is there, height is there, score, we have to keep it right, we have to keep a track of something, that what when is when the score when the score was scored by user or it was scored by computer, right, or the CPU, then the color of those bars. Similarly, we will do the same thing for CPU, same thing applied here, right? Now CPU, if you see, I subtracted 10 as it was the width, because CPU will be on the right side. Okay, that's why we need to subtract this 10 from that. You will see, if I won't, then the rectangular bar which we create for CPU will be some part of it will be outside the canvas, which we will not able to be, which will we won't be able to see. Okay, so that's why we subtracted this thing from the both. Okay, the x-axis and the y-axis, the width and the height respectively, and then the score, then the color is white. Okay, so now when we create this thing, okay, let's create these things first. Okay, so now this page is gone, and now let's see how to build it. So again, you see what I built here was same thing. I first fetched the thing, right, the canvas element, then I used draw function, then whatever I wrote is written in here, the velocity of the object, right? So the color of the ball will be green, and the speed in X direction and speed in Y direction is 5. Then the speed of the ball is 5, and then we have two objects, that is the user object and the CPU object, right? So once we created these objects, right, it's same stuff that I taught you earlier, same thing I have written here. Apart from that, there is nothing. Now the separator. Now if you see, I have created these functions for doing what I want. If I want to build something, right, let's talk about functional programming or something. You use functions. Why you use functions? To create modularity in your code, right? Sir, in HTML page, explain the script source pp.js. So the script tag is used to include the this JavaScript file, and the source which contains pp.js. It was written that the name of my file is ping-pong. So I wrote it in the shorter manner, p-p, that is ping-pong.js. This is the file that I'm going to use. Right now I'm going to use S3, after that S4, S5. So that thing is included here in our HTML page. So right now if you see, the source is S2. So I'm on this page. I was earlier than when I run this program, this thing was run, right? And now I'm on S3. So now, got it? And sir, if the width of CPU bar is 20, around 20, then X canvas dot width minus 20. So no, whatever we use as a width, we will see. I will show you in the demo, Supriya. Just wait. I will show you in the demo. If I didn't subtracted that thing from the X position and the Y position, what will be the output? Okay, I will explain you each and everything. So now, if you see, I have created these functions. We know how to create a function in JavaScript, right guys? So basically we use the function keyword, right? This is function declaration. Therein we have JavaScript. In JavaScript we have two things, right? Function declarations and function expressions, right? So this is a function declaration. We will call these functions, right? So now if you see, I have created a draw rectangle method, right? In that we have X position, Y position, width and height, and then the color. So color is used to fill the color of the rectangle, and draw fill rect is used to create the rectangle. So I will use these functions because I need to create rectangles and circles. So that's why I built functions for that, because it's the best way to do anything. Why we do this thing? Because we want to create modularity in our code. Create functions, we will create modules, right? This is one module, right? So this is done. Let me minimize it. Okay. So after that, we created same thing for circle as well. We use arc method to create the circle, right? So this is also done, right? We have explained this thing: fill style, begin path, close path, and fill. This is also for circle. And now we need the score, right? So for the score, basically what the score represent the marks, right? So if a user will throw a point, then he will call this method. And if what if a CPU wins a point, then he will call this method. So that's why we created this score, and this has three arguments: the text, and then obviously this will be placed somewhere in the canvas, so we have to use the x position and y position for this, right guys? So after that we will use same thing. First we will fill in the style, that is the color will be set to these, whatever we wrote, that will be the color of that is white. And then the font, that is 60 pixels. And then the family to which is belong, that is Arial. So this is the syntax for that, right? And after that, fill text, whatever we wrote in, whatever we get from the function, right? Function arguments, that text will be here, and then the x position and the y position. Simple, right? So this is for creating the score. Okay, and now then this draw separator, basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a loop here. Okay, for this, when I use this loop, basically what I'm doing, I am just iterating. And what I mean to say, basically I am creating in the middle of the canvas, I am creating rectangles, right? And after some space where I am creating again rectangle, so that there will be a space between the user position or the user bar or paddle and the CPU paddle. Okay, so that's what I am doing. Cool. So now let's see. You see, I created draw rectangle, and then the separation is that the object I used here. Okay, separate object, this. So I'm setting its x position, its y position, right? Separate dot x, separate dot y, and then plus y, because I want this thing to be separated. I will show you. First let me run this thing. Let's save this thing and let's connect this thing with S3. Maybe then we will be able to connect the dots. Okay, so now when I run this program, this is the output that I want. If you see carefully, the positions, that is the position, the bar, that is the CPU bar is on the left side, the user bar is on the left side, and the CPU bar is on the right side. Now we are creating this thing. Basically that bar is a rectangle function that we called. Then the draws text that we used, right? The draw text function that we used, right, was that 0, that is represent for both the user and for the CPU, that 0 0 thing. Okay, and then this separation line, that line you see of orange color, is I'm creating the small rectangles of width, which is having less width and less height. Okay, and the location of the circle is on the center. Okay, now what Supriya told, let's see that. What if we didn't subtracted that thing from our width? Okay, let's do it for maybe CPU. Okay, now if you see, if I didn't use this thing, okay, I just removed 10 minus 10, which was width. Okay, now let's see if the output remains same or not. Now you see that thing is gone, because width of the canvas, whatever was the width of that, it got hidden. It is not hidden, basically it got removed before that. The canvas that we built, it is after that. So to include that thing in our canvas, that's why we are using the subtraction sign. Okay, got it, Supriya? And what if we use 20 here, out of the window, exactly out of the window of the canvas? Yes, exactly. So what if we didn't included the height as well? Let's remove this thing. And you see, we are just whatever we wrote here, we are just printing everything in the center. So that's why the canvas dot height, whatever the height of the canvas is, divided by 2, that is the x position. Okay, the y position. Now let's save this file first, and now let's see whatever the height was of this. Now you see, whatever the height was, it started from that point. Okay, so basically it is not in the center, right? If you see, what difference did it make, right guys? Right, Abhishek, you see what difference did it make? So it's not in the center of the position, because again this creation, the x position and the y position, is that it's the center, right? It's the center point. So center point, we need to remove that height that we allocated to it. So when I use this heights to subtract this thing, so after that you will see then it's aligned to the center. Okay, now let's refresh it. Now you see it's aligned in the center. Same thing I'm doing for each and every object. Okay, now let's see what are the things. Okay, now how I created this separate. So draw function is clear. So draw score, again you will see this, right? Yes, it is not in the center. Exactly, so Priya. So now what I did for creating this separate function, right, the separator, that line that was of the orange color, for that I use loop. Okay, it's the edge started from the middle point. Exactly, Abhishek. Abhishek is right, it's the edge. Yes, started from the center point, that is starting from the center point. So to bring that thing in the center, we remove that, what, the height thing. Okay, so now this separator function, if you see, we are looping around up to the canvas height. Okay, from starting from 0, and every time we are incrementing it by 20. So basically here it represents the 20 is not value 20, basically it is a pixel kind of a thing, so that there is a separate gap between what, each rectangle. Now if you see there a gap. If you see my mouse pointer where I'm pointing, you see this gap, this is created, then another rectangle is created, then I'm incrementing it by 20, then that means there's a separation. Now if you see, if I incremented it by maybe 50, then there will be more separate. They will each rectangle will be much apart. Okay, they will be, you see, now they are more apart from each other because I created this 50 pixel gap between them. Okay, now let's remove this, keep it 10. Okay, so let's keep it 10 as it was 20, right? So yeah, so now what I did, I'm just creating the rectangle, and each rectangle, now you see I'm not doing anything with the x position because x position is same, the y position is varying. So that's why whatever is in that I will vary, and the y position is changing, and after that same thing, width and height are set, and then the color, right guys? So it's basically what I'm trying to do here, I'm creating rectangles. Okay, now this helper function that I created, basically what it contains, basically now this callback function that I'm using, basically let's go from line number 86. Okay, you see what does set interval function do? It calls this thing again and again, right? So this thing will be basically why I'm using this, because I'm using this to create an illusion that my this whatever is in the center, that circle, right, or that ball is moving. What I will do, every time when it's called, for example, let's visualize it why I'm using. So first time when a function is called, everything is black. Okay, and now whenever everything is black, there is a circle on it, okay, or the ball on it. Now every time when this set interval function is called, if I will do something, that I will just recreate this circle, right, I'm recreating the circle, but I am just shifting it 5 position to the right. Okay, so now there will be two circles, right? So now I will just again I will change the background. So you see when I did that game, that snake game, therein what I was doing, when I was trying to move that pointer, right, same thing I'm doing here. I'm just blacking out the screen and then placing again, blacking out the screen, then printing it again, blacking out the screen and then printing this ball again, and it's done with the help of set interval function. So within every second this function will be called. If you see why I'm using fps here, just to, I mean to say, this is every 100 millisecond, means every 1 second this function will be called. So I am blacking out the screen, then I am creating an illusion that this ball is moving. Okay, so every time black screen, then the ball, then black screen will hide the previous ball and new ball will be created. Basically it will create an illusion that this ball is moving. Okay, you got me guys, right? You feel me, right? What I'm trying to explain this thing, right? Voice is echoing. Okay, just a minute. Abhishek, Hello, can you hear me now, guys? Is the echo gone? Echo. Still is there still an echo or not? Just quickly write it if you are hearing any echo or any noise. Guys, just quickly write a yes. Okay, now. Okay, it's fine. Cool. So now you see, did you get the point, that illusion that I'm trying to create? Abhishek, Supriya, Vipul, yes, Bahira, Sheikh. So are you able to figure out the illusion that I'm creating? Basically, what I'm doing, I'm every time this set interval function is called, I'm creating an illusion that I will first there will be black background will be black, and this red will be there, red circle will be there. Now what I'm doing, I'm blacking this circle and I'm creating another circle upon it. So this creates an illusion that this ball is moving. So this set interval function will help me in doing that. Okay. Okay, cool, guys. So this illusion, I'm talking about the illusion now, not the echo that you were hearing. So this illusion that that I'm trying to explain you guys, can you I mean to say visualize this thing, right? Abhishek, can you visualize it? Supriya, Vipul, then Bahira, Sheikh, please participate in the chat so that everyone is on the same page. Okay, so can you guys visualize this thing that I'm trying to create an illusion that this ball is moving? Okay, couple, great, great. So can you visualize this thing? This set interval function call again, the background will be changed, then there will be an illusion that we are moving this, but we are not moving it. We are creating an illusion that again this will be created, same thing happen. So we are recreating it, but what this thing happens every half a second. So that's fps, this 50, I can also write this frames per second here as 50, okay, or 60. So this is the illusion, and every time this function will be called, so every half a second this function will be called, the set interval function. We know that this is a higher order function, right, guys? So I will just write it again, what fps, okay. So this fps function will call this function, fps is the variable I'm using. I don't want to use something 50 and then explain it to you guys. So this thing calls the, now therein we have redrawing after an interval. Yes, set interval every half a second. Yes, Abhishek, great. So now this will call this callback function, the function that we are going to use, right? In set interval we have two arguments, right? The first is the callback function and then the interval, right? So this callback function will call the helper function. Now you see, if I'm talking about this helper function, now what we are going to do, first we are going to create a rectangle, right? Of which the background color, right, it will start from 0 0 position and the background color is black. So this is the background. So that's, with the help of this we will create an illusion. So every time we are redefining that rectangle, that canvas, okay, and it is of color black. Now you see the score, listen, observe it carefully, okay. So now draw score. Again it will contain what, x position and y position. The y position is can width dot I mean to say canvas width divided by 4. So right now my canvas size is what, width is what, if I will just go back and see what is the canvas width, so it's 600. Now if I divide 600 by 4 or something in 4 parts, then I will get something 200 pixel, 200 pixel and 200 pixel, right, guys? So let's go back to this s3. So I'm creating it at that position. So if I'm not using this thing, right, now you see what happens. If I'm not using this thing, basically it's all about your I mean to say intuition and all about visualization. Now you see right now this 0, and now you see this 0 is gone because I didn't subtracted that width from it, right? So now, because now let's try to create this thing and 4 here, and now I am multiplying whatever was the score of the user. Now I'm multiplying that thing with the if you see the draw score function, another function, I'm multiplying it 3 times so that it will be separated from the earlier one, okay. So I'm just trying to print it wherever I want it. So if you see, if I print 2 here, right, I multiplied it, divided by 2, so it will be somewhere around here. Now you see it's somewhere around here, okay. So because 600 divided by 3 will be something around 300, so 300 will be somewhere around here. Okay, so the x position and the y position, just to separate these things, that's the mathematics I used. It's all about what, observing things, and it's all about intuition, right? I wanted it to separate in separate lines, so that's why I divided this thing by 4 and then the canvas height by 5. Okay, that's the thing I'm going to use. Okay, that's it. So draw function will contain what, these arguments, right? This is the text is 0. Yes, 300 pixel exactly. So similarly for the height as well, and same thing, the 0 is the text, and same thing for the CPU as well. Then the separator function will be called, right guys? This separator function will create a rectangles in the line in the center, and then we have the rectangle bar for user, right? And for CPU, the user bar color of which is what we wrote, red, and then for the CPU same thing is done, and then we created the circle. And when every time right now we are not creating it in a dynamic fashion, right now we are not updating anything, so that's why it remains static. Let's save this file, and when we go into this and when we run this thing, you see this thing, now this thing is called again and again. If I write something control shift I here, okay, 1 minute, control shift and I, now you see in the console, this is no, there is nothing happening because this function has been called again and again and again. Maybe if I just removed something from this thing, you will see the error that I get. For example, I wrote this thing here. Okay, let's remove this part. Okay, I wrote user, I wrote just a user. Okay, I'm creating an error so that you guys will know that something is running from this thing. Okay, it's not giving any error. Okay, just remove that thing. So basically what I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to visualize you guys. So F12. Okay, so now where were we? Okay, now this thing. So let's do one more thing. Let's save this file. Okay, now this thing is gone. Now we created our objects, right? And the functions that will help us. Now let's see what is this helper function doing. Now you got the point, right? We created everything. Now let's make it move. Okay, now for making it move, there is another thing that we want. First let's try to create some more functions. Okay, the restart function. If something is happening, right? If maybe for example right now when the user touches the screen, right, touches the canvas, I want that function, I want that ball to be placed again in the center, right guys? So this restart function will help me do that. Okay, basically if you see the ball dot x and ball dot y, the x position and the y position has been changed to canvas width divided by 2 and canvas width height divided by 2, so it will be on the center. And once it will, for example, if at this time it's moving in the x direction, then I want it to move in the opposite direction. So that's why the velocity of the ball has been changed, because y will remain the same, right? So we are just changing the x position, the x velocity. So x will go in the this direction. Earlier it was from the CPU side, then it will go from the user side, and the ball speed will remain again same. Why I'm using this ball speed? Because every time when I'm going to use this thing, I'm just going to increment my speed every time. So that's why. Now let's try to move that bar which is controlled by us, right? The CPU bar that we are going to use. So the CPU bar, that is the not the CPU bar but the user bar, will be controlled by the mouse event, right? So we will add event listener there, and with the help of mouse move, whenever we move the mouse, this get mouse function, mouse position will be called. It will contain the event, right? And then this get bounding glide function, right? This function will return several arguments, like the x position, the y position, the top, left, bottom, right, all these will be returned. This it will return, if you just run this thing in the window, right, the browser, it will just return the DOM event, and that DOM will contain all these pointers. Well, x position, y position, top, left, right, top, bottom. Okay, all these position. And now since this position, only the y position will be affected, x will remain same, right? The x position will remain same, only the y position will change, right? I'm dragging it up and down. I'm not going to take it out from the that position which earlier it was in, right? So this position, what will it do? I will just, whatever the whatever the earlier position was, I'm just subtracting that new position whatever I got, and the top will be changed, so I'm subtracting that top from it, and the user height, because height will be also changed. So this thing divided by 2, obviously that this height earlier whatever was the position, then this position will change because I want it exactly at that position which I did, right? When I removed that height divided by 2, you see that that bar got shifted to the center, right? No, that was not exactly on the center. So to get that thing, I did this thing. Okay, so now this pointer will help us to move, and then we detect the collision. So first, detecting the collision, let me show you how we will move the CPU. So the first thing, we will create a CPU movement, or we will create one function. So what I'm going to do, every time I'm just going to move it in the y direction. Whenever it sees the ball, based on the direction of the ball, y position of the ball, that is the y coordinate of the ball, I will just increment this in the y position, or if it is going in the other direction, I will just decrement it in the y direction. This is one way to do it. Okay, the other way is that we are going to use this mathematics, that basically what AI we are going to use. Basically this mathematics will help us to, again, this will always be the case when the CPU will always win. Okay, so we are not going to use this thing because then it won't make any sense. Okay, so again, another function is that what we are going to use, we are going to create a random function, and then we want that random function to create values between the height, whatever was the canvas height. So that's why we are multiplying this thing from that height, and then it will be allocated to CPU's y position, right? So these are few things, few ways we can do it. The simplest one is to create this, the CPU movement, whatever was the movement, based on the y position of the ball, it will just increment in that position plus y when it go when the CPU position is less than the ball position, that is the y coordinates are less, then it will increment it in the y direction, else it will increment in the plus in that direction. We will subtract it. We will see all those things. Now, how to detect a collision? So basically, if you see this function carefully, and is this diagram that I have shown here. Okay, so let's see it now. Okay, so basically, obviously we have to detect the collision from either side, right? It can be the detection, the collision can be on the CPU end, or it can be on the what, CPU end, or on the user end. So basically what are we going to do, this player dot top is equal to player y. So basically this whatever we got, whatever is the player's y coordinate, we will put it in the top, and similarly y, and why we are plus, why we are incrementing this, the plus height, why we are incrementing. If you see earlier, when I talked about y coordinate, we just removed that height from that, so that thing has to be included again to know the bottom, right? So exact bottom will be this. So similarly left will be as it is, but right will change, because right will again contain the width. If you see, when we created the object and then we subtracted those things, so we are just again including those things in this. Okay, great. So now left, right, top, bottom, we have all those things. Similarly, as I told you, the pointer will start when I talked about that circle. When we try to create, again that circle was created in the center, but we have to just remove the radius so that we are at the top, right? So when we are at the top of this ball, that means we have to remove that radius from it, so that it comes at the top of the circle. Similarly, the y position, that is the radius, the bottom will be again incremented so that we are at the bottom, right guys? You're trying to visualize at the first step that I told you about the pointer. This is all about this addition and subtraction is all because of that thing, because every time when the circle is drawn, the center position we are known only the center position, that is 100 comma 100. It is the center position, it is the center coordinates. So to get to the top, we have to add something to get to the top, right guys? So that will be obviously ball radius, and to get to the bottom we have to add that ball radius, and to get to the up we have to remove that ball radius. Similarly for the left and the right, right guys? So to add something and to go to the right, we have to add, and to remove something we have to go to the left. So these are these pointers which will be used to detect the collision. Now this is all the things that we have. We now all the the length, the breadth, the top, bottom, left and right are known to us. Now for the players, both the CPU and the what, the user, as both of them. Okay, top should be, what should be top, Vipul? So plus 1, why 1? Basically the radius, right? If you're talking about ball, it should be plus something, right? No, okay, you are saying the top should be plus. Oh no, because if you see, whenever the pointer is at 100 comma 100, so you are thinking about that coordinates which we have in mathematics, but this thing works in a different way. Okay, some of the licenses are showing private. Please explain the top. It should be plus. No, Vipul. You see now, if something is at basically, let me show you. Let me try to visualize this thing. Okay, Vipul plus radius. See the code. Now, if you see the code, listen to me carefully. So, right and left are clear to you, right? So, something is at the center. Now, if I decrement something from it, right? So, earlier, what was the position of ball X? Let's suppose it is on 10, 10. Okay. Now, this 10 will be at the center. So, to reach at the top, I have to decrement something from it, right? To reach at the top. Because whenever we move in the top direction, the coordinates in this canvas will decrease, and whenever we are at the bottom, the coordinates will increase. So that's the main thing that I'm using. Okay, so to subtract something, I will just go to the top. Okay, and to add something, I will go from the bottom to the bottom. And now what will I add and subtract will be the radius. Okay, that's it. So you try to visualize it, you try to play with that canvas and see, whenever you move up, is the coordinates decreasing or is the coordinate increasing? You will get the point there. Right now I told you whatever you need to know. So basically, when you create a canvas, try to, yeah, cool Vipul. So try to visualize, whenever you are trying to move up, do you increase your coordinates, or do you decrease your x coordinate? Okay, you will get that. Eventually you will get that, you don't have to worry. So right now these things have to keep in mind. And then now let's detect the collision. So if you see now, if top is less than bottom, okay, the player's top is less than ball's or bottom of the ball, that means we are touching the that bar or that paddle at the top. Similarly, when we are, same thing is happening for the left and the right and the bottom. So you try to visualize it. For example, let's say as example, now the player top is at 100. The player top is at 100, right? And now when the ball dot bottom is less than, that means it's going beyond that, right? And now when we will see, if it's going beyond the top, that means top is less than the ball, that means it's touching at the top. So top, bottom, left, right, and right, left, and bottom, top. Exactly, the graph plotting. Yeah, so this thing, now we have detected the collision. Okay, and now let's do the main thing, that we want. Let's try to see the whole program that we built. So now you see this s5, that's s5.js. now you see, if anything is not clear to you, tell me guys. So now what we did, we created this, we have this first line, that is, we selected the elements, we draw with the help of get context. Then we have these four objects. What are the four objects? Ball, right? We have this ball, done. We have this user function, this user object, right? Done. I'm just minimizing it because this is almost done. CPU object, now this separation object. Anywhere you feel that you're not able to understand, just tell me at that position. Rectangle function is done, circle function is done, draw score function is done, separation function is done. Now restart function is obvious, right? Whatever, if we want to restart the game, we don't want to go always in the CPU's direction or on the user direction. We are just, for example, if you see, I'm just negative time, I'm multiplying whatever the value of that velocity is, right? So it will go in the opposite direction. -5 into -5 is +5. So +5 into -5 is what? -5. Now -5 into -5, again 5. So this is the thing that we are going to use. So it's a lot of mathematics in here. So this is the detect function. Then the event function, that is the mouse event function. right? The CPU function that I'm going to use for the CPU movement is this. As I told you that AI mathematics can be also used, right? So after that, helper function is there, right? This is done. The helper function is done. Then this update function will be, we will cover this callback function is there, and we have this update function, okay? And then the helper function is done, okay? Now we are left with what? This update function. Basically, okay, detect collision. So basically we are detecting the collision by in this manner. Basically what is happening in this detect collision. So let me first try to tell you guys about update function, because after that more whatever we do, this update function is responsible for all those things. For example, detecting the collision happens in there, mouse movements will happen in here, okay, everything will happen in here, and all the updates, okay. So basically, now if the ball's x position is when we subtract radius from it, right? Because we know whenever we are trying to calculate in the x direction, we have to remove that radius, right? So if it's less than, that means whatever is happening, it is happening to the CPU score, right? So that's why we okay, can you please explain the get mouse function? Okay, okay, let me quickly just explain this mouse function first. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a function that is called, that is obviously associated with canvas, that is get bounding client rectangle. So this means whatever, if we are changing anything, whatever is the new positions of that change that we did, right? So it will be present in that. With the help of this get bounding client rectangle, we will able to fetch those things. What? Top, left, bottom, right, and x position and y position. So basically x position will remain same, right guys? So that's why we are just dealing with y position. So the now y position will be, so whatever is the, whatever on which, whatever was the new position of that, what which we just moved. For example, if we moved mouse from 100 to 200, I'm talking about y coordinates. So what is the new coordinate that I got is 200. Now I will remove the top position of whatever was the earlier position of that. So I removed that thing, and I removed what? The height divided by 2, okay? So that's what why I'm doing, only for the y position, okay? Only for the y position. Similarly, what the CPU movement and what was this function detect collision, okay? Now, so basically, you got the point that why I'm removing some things from the top left and from the bottom and the right to get to the exact location. If you just when I got this to this point, when I talked starting about when I started this slide, I talked about you the positions, that what happens actually, what is the pointer location. So that's why, keeping that thing in mind, I added something, and I added something from the right side, and I removed from in when I talking about, you see, there is a difference between the when we try to create the rectangle and when we try to create a circle. So circle, in that circle everything needs to be changed, the top, left, bottom, right, because the center point is, if I'm talking about the x coordinate and y coordinate, it will be the center location. So to move to the top, I have to remove something, to move to the left and to the right, to the bottom. So there needs to be done this abstract this addition and subtraction when we talk about the ball. When we talk about rectangle, some things will remain same. What? The top position and the right position, because that is the top location of the, whenever I talk about 100, 100, this 100 represents the top, this 100 represents the, what? The right position, and this top represents the y position. So that's why player dot y and x dot this left and the right are as it is, okay? Now when we talk about bottom and the right, you need to add the height, because if you see, when I earlier tried, when I not removed, when I was trying to create the objects, at that time I removed something from it. At that time it was clear to you guys that why I'm removing this thing, right guys? So now that thing needs to be added here to know the exact location of that, what? Of that rectangle, okay? So now once I remove this thing, and then I'm checking this condition, if none of these is, if anything is false, that means, if it returns false, that means there is no collision, okay? Now if it returns true, that means there is a collision. And what exactly I'm doing here basically is this thing. Keep this picture in mind, okay? Now the player dot top, if the player dot top is less than the ball dot bottom, that means we are touching its top. You need to visualize it. You take coordinates, you take some coordinates and then try to visualize it. For example, you try to whatever you are trying to do, try to do it with some numbers. Basically, when you use it numbers here, basically you will get the idea of what I meant by when top is less than the bottom, that is player's top and ball's bottom. It is less than, that means I'm touching the top, and similarly for the left and the right and the bottom. If it's greater than this thing, that means I'm touching at the bottom of that paddle. Okay, so now let's keep this picture in mind and use some pointers. Okay, basically when I talk about pointers, you have to use x coordinates and the y coordinates for ball as well as for the player. That means the x coordinate and the y coordinate, and use these addition and subtraction to get the exact location of them, the top location, the bottom location and the left location. You will find out that this thing is justified, whatever is written here, and this thing is used here. And if all of them return, all of these conditions are true, that means this will return a true. That means we have detected the collision. Now let's talk about the final function, that is our update function. Now if you see, if x, that is the ball x coordinates, is when I subtract this thing from what ball radius, okay, now we get the exact x coordinate. If it's less than, that means that it is going beyond that, whatever is the, if the ball is in the what, it's in the user's area. That means when I talk about the area, you see, that means this ball should have been somewhere here. If you see the pointer, my pointer, it should be somewhere outside this box. That means that user lost the point. That's why I am updating what, CPU's point. Same thing goes for this. Now that thing was dealt with the help of ball, but when I talk about the CPU side, that means ball dot x plus radius. That means ball will, whatever the ball, if the ball is touching something on the width on that other side, that means it goes beyond the canvas width. That means user scores a point, and once it scores the point, we call the restart function. And if it was on the user side, then the ball will go from the center position towards the what, towards the CPU side, or vice versa. Then the CPU movement is called, because CPU needs to move again and again and again. It keeps on moving with the help of that. Now for the top and bottom, if you see, if the ball touches the top and the bottom, okay, if the ball touches the top, that means I have to divert its direction. That means it will go beyond something, beyond the bottom, the top side. That means, that is why I'm showing here less than. The Vipul was saying that why I'm subtracting, because when we move upwards, the x coordinates and the y coordinates will decrease. So once it will go less than 0, that means we are touching the top. And similarly, if we talk about bottom, at that time it will increase. That means y is incrementing. So if it's greater than the canvas height, that means we have to redirect its direction. That it means earlier it was going down, then once it touched that canvas, it should go upwards. So that's it. With the help of pointers, try to use some arbitrary values, 100, 100, that is the exposition of the ball, and for the CPU you used, for the player you will use different pointers. Once you will put all those values and find the exact top, bottom, left, right for both ball and the for this paddle, that is the player's paddle, that is the rectangle that is shown. Then you will try to, once you will use those methods, those greater than player dot bottom should be greater than top, then you will find out that okay, this is the thing that is happening. That means I am touching at the top, and then that means when I am touching the bottom, this is the thing that is happening. You will find out. Okay, just try to think of it. Cool. Now let's detect the player. Who is the player? Basically, now the player can be either the CPU or the user. Now let's check how will we be going to use this thing. If the ball dot radius, obviously it is, if it's in this portion, then this thing happen. If this is in this portion, then this thing happen. Okay. Now once I will use this thing, I will find out that if it is, let me show you here. Now if the ball is in this portion, okay, the user portion, that means the radius should be less than, right, the ball dot x plus ball dot radius is less than this thing, which means the canvas width, it will be on that side. That means we are playing right now, user is playing, and same thing is happening when it's on the other side, that means CPU is playing. Now we detect the collision, and once we detect the collision, if it came to be 2, then we find out the collision points. So basically you can remove all those things that is written in here, and you can use simply just revert back that if the collision is detecting, just go in the x direction or y direction. Now what I'm doing here, I'm just trying to use some mathematics here. So basically when I we check here, the first line, we check whether the ball hits the paddle or not. So basically this line will show that if the ball's paddle is hit or not. So basically what I'm doing, player dot y minus that heights, the player of the height of the player and the y coordinate, when I add them together, and I will find the exact location where the ball hits. Once I found out this thing, then what I did, I found it out the collision point. Then I am just reverting the direction in the degrees. I mean to say 45 degrees, 0 degree, and the plus 45 degree. Basically these things can be removed. If you don't want to use, you just revert whatever was the position. Just use minus sign to get it back, and use plus sign to get from the other end. That means multiply it by the minus sign. You will also be able to do this thing. And now after that, what I'm doing, finally I am just incrementing the ball speed every time this if the detection if this thing is happening. So finally when I wrote everything this together, so these are the functions that I wrote. And now let's save this file, and now let's add this file, and let's see the final output. When I run this thing, you see that thing is moving slowly, and right now we are not getting anything because now none of the this is missed. You see that restart function got called, and again now let's see here. Now I missed. You see the ball pointer again started from the center. Okay, now let's try to, you see again I missed. Again it started from the center in the opposite direction. Earlier it was going in this direction. Now you see the AI is not making me win. He is moving in the ball's direction, whatever is the ball's direction, because I used AI. So if you use the CPU mouse movement, at that time you will be able to win. Okay, so these are the functions that we used here. The two vertical lines, the ball, then the CPU movement was all those things. Then the movements of the bar was on the update function, detection, collision detection, updating the score. Okay, so that's it, we are done. CPU is not losing because I am using AI here. So if you see, if I show you guys this function, where it is in the update function. Collision is detected here, and now let me show you here. So this is a function that I used. So this mathematics, CPU ball y minus whatever is the direction of the y coordinate of the ball, I'm using this thing to subtract and from the CPU's position and height. If you want the CPU to lose, then this is the thing that you can use. You just create this function CPU movement and then add 5 in the either of the directions. Okay, so that's it. Okay guys, so that's it, and we are done with this thing. Okay, thank you so much guys, thanks a lot. So the competitive programming part 2 will be whatever it will be. The part 2 is done. Part 3 and 4, 3 was supposed to happen today, but it got cancelled due to some technical issues. So it will be conducted next week, and maybe on Saturday and Sunday we will try to cover both third and fourth part. Okay, thank you so much guys, thanks.